Welcome to Shot Recap, and this is the movie Remember. A former Auschwitz prisoner is hunting down escaped Nazis responsible for his family's death and uncovers a horrifying truth. The film opens with the main character, Zev Gutman, waking up. Still half asleep, he calls out for his wife, but there's no response. The elderly man steps out of his room, and we learn that he lives in a nursing home. Zev asks a nurse where his wife is, and she sadly informs him that she passed away 2 weeks ago. Zev is suffering from dementia, and his memory is failing more and more each day. The nurse takes him to the dining hall for breakfast, saying he always feels better after he eats. At the table, an orderly brings over Max, Zev's old friend in a wheelchair. Max asks if Zev remembers the promise he made on the day his wife died. Of course, Zev doesn't remember, but Max reassures him. He's written down detailed instructions so Zev can follow them and won't forget anything. That evening, after a visit from relatives and a Jewish religious gathering, Max gives Zev an envelope with a letter. Inside are step-by-step instructions for what's about to happen. The old man tells his son he's tired and heads up to his room, where he reads the letter. Inside the envelope, along with the letter, are some cash and a train ticket. After reading it, Zev quietly leaves his room, and with surprising agility for his age, sneaks out of the nursing home. Outside, a taxi is already waiting to take him to the train station. While his relatives and the nursing home director are discussing his disappearance the next morning, Zev boards a train to Cleveland. On the train, he meets a young boy traveling with his brothers to visit their grandfather. But when Zev dozes off, his short-term memory resets. Upon waking, he mistakes the boy for his own grandson and starts acting strangely, scaring the confused kid. But then Zev finds Max's letter in his pocket and dives back into reading. He must follow the plan closely and cross off each completed step. At the station, the boy's father approaches Zev after hearing about the odd behavior from his son. He offers help, but a driver holding a sign with Zev's name is already waiting for him. The driver takes him to a gun store, where Zev buys a simple, easy-to-use handgun, an Austrian Glock. He also asks the clerk to write down step-by-step instructions for handling the weapon, just in case. Armed, Zev heads to a hotel, where the concierge is expecting him. The staff has been given clear instructions about his arrival. In the room, Zev calls Max, who's still back at the nursing home, to report that he made it safely. Then he takes a bath and goes to sleep. The next morning, Zev arrives at a private residence where a man named Rudi Kurlander lives. He's a former German soldier who fled to America after the war. Zev pulls a gun on him and demands to know if he served at Auschwitz. The man admits he was a soldier, but says he served in North Africa under Rommel, not at Auschwitz. The man has plenty of evidence, photos and medals, to back up his story. Despite the outcome of the war, the old German doesn't hide his pride in serving his country and insists he had no connection to concentration camps. After the conversation, Zev returns to the hotel and calls Max to report on his visit to the first Rudi Kurlander on the list. He's not the man they're looking for. Max tells his friend to keep searching. There's a promise they need to fulfill. Zev boards a bus and heads to Canada. During the ride, Max's voice narrates that he and Zev are the only two survivors from their Auschwitz barrack. After the war, Max moved to America and learned that some SS officers had immigrated under false identities. One of them was Otto Wallisch, the Blockführer responsible for their families' deaths. He had assumed the name Rudi Kurlander. Using his resources and connections, Max tracked down 4 men with that name who matched the age and background of their target. But only 2 people could identify him by face, the survivors. And since traveling in a wheelchair isn't exactly easy, Zev was the one who had to carry out the promise to kill him. The next morning at the Canadian border, Zev is nearly turned back because his passport is expired. He's saved only by the fact that he has a valid driver's license as a second form of ID. Zev had cleverly left the handgun on the bus, hidden under his jacket. Once he arrives at the Canadian nursing home, he meets the second Rudi Kurlander. The man is bedridden, weakened by illness, lying in a hospital room. Shielded by a curtain for privacy, Zev asks him directly whether he was at Auschwitz during the war. When the man replies yes, Zev pulls out the gun and points it at him. But as the old German raises his hand instinctively to shield himself, Zev notices a tattoo, a prisoner number, the same kind Zev has on his own arm. That kind of tattoo was used by the Nazis to brand prisoners. This Rudi Kurlander was one of them, a homosexual sent to the camps. Zev, overwhelmed with emotion, breaks down in tears and apologizes before quietly leaving. leaving. As he's about to exit the Canadian nursing home, the elderly Avenger hears piano music coming from one of the rooms. He follows the sound. He used to play long ago, and even now, his trembling hands remember how to dance across the keys. After playing a piece, Zev returns to the United States. He still has 2 addresses left. As string music echoes in his mind, the landscape rolls by outside the window, looking like the default wallpaper. When Zev arrives at his new hotel, his dementia worsens. He gets distracted while the front desk clerk tries to talk to him. Later, he heads out to buy some new clothes. His wardrobe has seen better days, but on his way out of the store, a security guard stops him. The security alarm had gone off. After checking the receipt, the guard realizes the cashier simply forgot to remove the anti-theft tag. But as he checks another bag, he notices the gun. Still, the guard isn't a cop, and the Second Amendment allows citizens to carry firearms. He wishes the old man a good day and lets him go. Exhausted from the long journey, Zev stops by a cafe to grab something to eat. As usual, he flips through Max's letter while the waitress pours him some coffee, chatting non-stop the entire time. Suddenly, some unruly, unsupervised kids bump into her, and she spills coffee all over Zev's papers. Back in his room, before the ink is completely ruined, he carefully rewrites the contents of the letter by hand. His mission isn't over yet. The next address is far out in the countryside, about an hour away by taxi. When Zev knocks on the door, there's no answer, but a dog inside starts barking like crazy, which means the owners are bound to return sooner or later. Zev takes a seat on the porch and waits. By evening, the homeowner arrives. He turns out to be a state police officer. Zev asks if he can see Rudy Kurlander. The officer confirms that this is the correct address, but his father passed away about 3 months ago. He invites Zev inside, locking the dog in a separate room first. During their conversation, Zev learns that the officer's father really did live in Germany and often spoke about those times. It turns out this third Rudy Kurlander was a passionate admirer of the Third Reich. He collected Nazi memorabilia, swastika flags, officer uniforms, and even a first edition of Mein Kampf. The son has sold off parts of the collection, but he admits he couldn't bring himself to get rid of everything. Zev also learns that Kurlander participated in Kristallnacht on November 8, 1938, the pogrom during which Jewish storefronts were smashed by Nazi mobs. With each new detail, Zev becomes increasingly convinced he's finally found the Rudy Kurlander he's been searching for, the one who served as a Blockführer at the concentration camp. But that whole theory falls apart when it's revealed that the cop's father was just a young boy during Kristallnacht and that he worked as a cook. He never served at Auschwitz, a fact he apparently regretted for the rest of his life. Realizing his mistake, Zev stands to leave, but then the officer notices the camp tattoo on Zev's arm. His Nazi upbringing suddenly kicks in. He explodes in rage, yelling at the old man and shoving him, refusing to let him go. Terrified, Zev wets himself and the couch, which only enrages the cop even more. He storms into the next room to release the dog. In the meantime, Zev pulls the gun from his bag. As the German Shepherd lunges at him, he shoots it. Then, with surprising steadiness for a man his age, he fires 2 deadly shots at the officer. Crushed by stress and exhaustion, Zev steps into the shower, still fully clothed, and lets the water run over him. Then he collapses into bed in the home of the man he just killed. When Zev wakes up, he's disoriented, unsure of what happened or where he is. But after rereading the letter and recalling the previous events, the memories return. He calls Max to tell him what happened. Despite everything, their mission still isn't complete. After changing into clean clothes, Zev continues on. Several hours later, he gets off a bus in another town. While crossing the street, chasing after a woman he mistakes for his wife, he falls and injures his arm. He's taken to the hospital, and the staff notify his son of his whereabouts. Surprised that his father managed to get so far, the son heads out to find him. In the hospital room, once Zev regains some clarity, he chats with a little girl who's visiting her father with her mother. He wants to give her some candy and asks her to check the pockets of his jacket, but instead of sweets, the girl finds a letter. At Zev's request, she reads it out loud. Hearing the words once again brings Zev back to his purpose. He slips out of the hospital and hails a cab. He's nearly out of cash, but the end of his journey is near. At the hotel, he has to pay with a credit card, which triggers a notification to his son. The son immediately contacts the taxi company to track down where his father was dropped off. Zev arrives at the final address. He's greeted by the daughter of Rudy Kurlander, the homeowner. She allows him to wait inside for her father to return. While offering him a cup of coffee, she gently asks if his visit has anything to do with Auschwitz. She says her father doesn't like to talk about that period of his life. At that moment, the man's granddaughter walks into the room, and Zev sits down at the piano and begins to play. As the music echoes through the house, the homeowner quietly descends the staircase behind Zev. Surprised, he comments that a former camp inmate would enjoy Wagner's music. Zev recognizes the voice immediately and tells Rudy Kurlander as much. The two old men step outside to the veranda for a private conversation. Rudy admits he's been lying to everyone for years, but oddly, he seems genuinely glad that Zev has come. He even gives him a friendly hug. Zev orders the man to take his hands off him and calls him by the name Otto. Rudy is surprised and slightly amused because, according to him, his name isn't Otto at all. But the visitor doesn't believe him. After years of lies, he's convinced the former Nazi has simply lost track of his real name. Just then, Zev's son arrives at the house. Rudy's daughter brings him out to the veranda, where they witness the guest pointing a gun at the homeowner. Zev's son pleads with him to lower the weapon, but Zev, haunted by the memory of his family murdered at Auschwitz, threatens to shoot Rudy's granddaughter unless the man immediately confesses the truth to his family. In tears, Rudy admits he wasn't a camp prisoner as everyone believed. He was an SS officer, a Blockführer named Kunibert Sturm. Zev insists he's Otto Wallisch, but then comes the shocking truth. Rudy reveals that Otto Wallisch is actually Zev. As proof, Rudy shows his own prisoner tattoo, number 813. Zev's tattoo is 814. They were both SS officers. To avoid prosecution, they tattooed each other with fake inmate numbers. Zev denies it. He shoots Rudy. Then, as the truth begins to come back to him, he turns the gun on himself and pulls the trigger right in front of his son. Later, back at the nursing home, Max and the other residents are watching the news, which reports on the tragic incident. Max reveals the final truth. When Zev was first brought to the facility, Max immediately recognized him as Otto Wallisch, the SS Blockführer who murdered his entire family. He waited patiently for dementia to erode the former Nazi's memory just enough. Then he manipulated Zev, Otto, into going on a mission to hunt down his old comrade. The plan worked perfectly, and justice, though long overdue, finally caught up with the war criminals. And that brings us to the end of this haunting journey, a story of memory, guilt, and the price of forgetting. Thanks for staying with me till the last scene. It's stories like this that linger long after the credits roll. Until next time, Mike Moz was with you. Take care.